You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see 2 people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
Everybody, we are back with another episode of Horror Movie Night, and this week we are talking about the 40-year anniversary of Blood Tracks, picked by Kyle.
The people have been waiting to celebrate. Let's reclaim this bitch.
I'm interested to talk about this because I feel like my first note was I didn't know it was possible to love a movie in the first 30 seconds, yet here we are.
Yeah.
And then I feel like my opinion started to track downward the longer that the movie went on, but it starts and I'm just like, I already like the vibe of this. Like, you hit play on, we all had to watch this on YouTube. You click play on that YouTube and it's just immediate drunk man walking by train tracks with that ever so familiar 80s synth sound happening, and I was just like, oh baby, we have just struck gold immediately.
Yeah, I was excited because I had found this movie when we were trying to be seasonal, but we've through the many episodes that y'all have done and we've done together, there's been a lot of snow stuff, and there's not a big pool to pick from. I think that's not directly seasonal, holiday, that's not directly holiday. So it was, and of course I picked it months ago, and then Vinegar Syndrome puts out a Blu-ray of it. So there is a better version of it out there that we did not partake in. Apparently, a better, visually better version. It doesn't make the movie any
still
better.
a polished turd.
Yeah, I think that whatever happens in the end of this movie, I barely knew what was going on. There was at least 2 or 3 points where it was just a fully black screen with sound.
Yes, there was. I have a countdown of at least around 3 minutes of full black with screaming. But here, you're right. I mean, it does touch upon a few things right out the gate that were very exciting. I would say within the first 20 minutes, I was like, this is hitting some points.
I was getting a lot of good vibes
at the beginning. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Now, I guess, Scott, you have like some great ad blocker program for your YouTube. I don't.
It's nothing special. It's literally ghostery. I've told you 10 times now.
I know.
Just download it.
I know. But my experience watching this movie, and I don't know if you experienced this too, Kyle, but the madman who uploaded this to YouTube for all of us to see set a commercial marker for every 3 to 5 minutes. So for the entire 82-minute runtime, it would just cut to another ad. And so this 82-minute movie took me almost 2 hours to watch with how many ad breaks.
That's so insane. I finished this in 70 minutes because I watched it on 1.25 speed, which makes the song so much better, by the way. I actually turned it up to 2x for the song, and I was like, is it going to be any better? I was like, no, 1.25 is the way to go.
So I love that the song was the thing. You were like, I gotta go a little bit faster.
I didn't know if it was going to sound like
thrash,
a speed metal song, but it did not actually.
Let's address the easy action in the room here. This movie legitimately might be the most obscure film that we've talked about in years, because not only could I not find a Wikipedia page for this movie to tell me anything about it, but it's a movie that features an obscure hair metal band from Sweden named Easy Action, and even on their fairly sparse Wikipedia page, no mention of this movie,
which is crazy, because like this should have been something for them. But,
something.
No, the
most notable thing on the entire Easy Action Wikipedia page is that they successfully sued Poison over the song I Want Action for stealing their guitar riff and like basic chorus melody.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
that would
amazing.
actually that makes sense in a legal perspective, because Poison was like, let's steal their riff and make a joke about it in the title.
Yeah,
so,
I Want Easy Action was the original name of that song.
Yes, exactly. Matt knows.
Yeah. So silly.
Which is in the grand scheme of Poison hits, a perfectly acceptable Poison hit, but not the one I go to.
No one goes to the fucking song.
No. I'm trying to rally the troops to go see Bret Michaels. He's coming up this way in February, and I gotta show my Rock of Love hero some love.
I was gonna say, dear Lord, Rock of Love. The amount of times that show will just cut to a weird black and white shot of Bret Michaels really struggling while every rose has its thorns placed in the background.
Yes. Yes. It's like he lives it. He lives it every day. God bless him. Let's go ahead and.
But yeah, tell us what happens in this. Let's pop some drinks and talk about the plot.
Wandering in, we're gonna go ahead and wander right into the snow with Abomination's Wandering into the Snow, which is a double dry hopped double IPA with lactose and marshmallow.
My goodness, that sounds like a stomachache waiting to happen. Can't wait for it.
What do you got going on?
I've been holding on to this since Creature Feature last year. Kyle gave me sweater weather from Niantic, right?
Niantic Public House.
Yeah.
The homies.
I knew that you were going to do Blood Tracks in January, and so I've been holding on to it because I was like, well, I'll do it whenever it's cold.
Year.
Yeah.
Well, cheers. It's very tasty. It's very seasonal.
It's great.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
And it hasn't gone bad, which is fantastic. I'm really happy about that.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I know what I have to do next week. And
what's that?
I had no problem doing the plot summary, but I do not envy you with this impossible task.
It's okay.
Of doing this.
We got this. We got this pretty easy. So, right out the gate, a protective mother kills an abusive partner and runs away with her kids into the snowy mountains. Now, 40 years later, which is crazy.
My first note says, did that voiceover just say 40 years?
40 years.
And I love how we get that voiceover there as well. It's
and never to be heard again.
Yes, it's so unnecessary. They could have, because I believe, didn't it say 40 years later and it had a title card that said 40 years?
Yep.
They didn't need that.
I mean, every other thing was fucking ADR'd in this, so it was fine.
No,
but
it was
so 1945,
insane.
she kills her abusive partner, and they're at like, I don't know if it's a halfway house or some sort of like hovel, and this guy goes, "Murderer! You're murderer!" But he doesn't stop them, which I think is amazing. And so the whole concept is that, like she and her sons have to like go hide in the factory
like
for
they have
40
nowhere,
years.
Like they're nowhere else to go.
Also, that factory is still.
I mean, I guess she murdered somebody, but
but like it's first of all self-defense.
Self-defense for sure. Yeah. I mean,
but it's Scott. Come on now. 1945. Are they gonna buy self-defense on a woman? Like, not to be a dick, but that was not exactly a great time for
being
for
a
that.
And neither is 2025. But
I
get what you're saying. I also think that we're already on thin ice with this concept here by having them be able to survive for 40 years in this factory. Because I don't know if you guys know anything about scurvy, but it's a vitamin C deficiency, and it doesn't happen necessarily on boats. It happens because you're not eating fucking vegetables and fruit. So because you can't get vitamin C from animal meat. And so the expectation here is that they've been living off the land for 40 years. And the double expectation for me is that they've only been trapping animals for 40 years. And so they're semi-crazed, like they're like, mountain men, crazed mountain men. But one of them is more psychotic than the rest. But I'm
the younger
guessing
they get, the more psychotic they are, because they were children, and as they grow and age,
they had less.
I don't know how many of them there are. I don't know.
I thought there were 3, but it seems like they have multiplied. I'm not sure.
I think that there's 4, but I really don't know. You see most of them in the dark as just big, and they have just as big hair as the bandmates and the groupies that are all also on this mountain that we get to 40 years later. It's kind of you can't distinguish a lot of them. No. But they run in the mountains, voice over 40 years later, then they cue Blood Tracks, title track by Easy Action. We love an original song, and Easy Action is now part of the movie, and they are filming a music video, not an entire movie, as their band manager clarifies to the local media. Just a scene for a music video, which is crazy to me. Like, I know that bands and like, you had money to just go do these things and make music videos at this time, but to me, the differentiation between like having to, and this is a theme throughout the movie too, and it's not just the characters, but clearly this filmmaker has to tell people that he knows how to make movies, because there are 3 instances in which characters have a conversation that is sort of presented as insider baseball on like, this is how you make movies. It's like we don't have sound because this is a music video, and there's a clear moment that somebody explains that to our helicopter pilot, who will be our hero. It's very, very silly.
You know what? Again, I no spoilies for next week, but boy,
it kind of dovetailed very nicely.
It really did. Now that you point that out,
Matt. two other very quick Easy Action facts, because literally the only facts on IMDb are about the band Easy Action. The song Blood Tracks for the movie has never been available commercially on any of their albums. In fact, there is no existing public copy of the song aside by what's found in the film, with characters speaking all over top of the song.
Oh my God.
And also
what
the
could
lead
have
singer,
been, guys?
The lead singer of the band, Zinzan, actually left the band.
No shot. That's his name, dog.
Literally left the band after they finished filming the movie, and by the time it was released, he was replaced by their new singer, Tommy Nielsen.
Oh my God!
And that's not like a Swedish name, Tommy Nielsen.
No.
Zinzan for sure.
Zinzan is
Zinzan's real name is Bo Stagman. So,
he wasn't born Zinzan.
This movie
the
is
Zan
so much
family
more
didn't give birth to a child and say we must name him Zin.
on the Vinegar Syndrome. I was just trying to see if there was like a isolated music track on the special features on this Blu-ray,
no way.
just in case. I was like, if somebody's gonna be able to find it, it's gonna be them. They did not find it, but they do have Bo Stagman, aka Zinny Zan, which makes me think his full name is Vincent Zan, but it's not. Okay, that's okay, guys. Don't go searching for blood tracks by Easy Action. You're not going to find it except in this film.
I do want to do one quick little clarification, y'all, for the listeners. The band in the movie has a completely different name. They're called Solid Gold, and no one is dressed for the weather. Did you notice this?
No. Dude, nobody.
The townsfolk who are losing their shit because Solid Gold is on the mountain, they're all wearing like flannels. I mean, that's still not appropriate to be living on a mountain in the middle of winter. And then
that has an avalanche warning, active like avalanche warning out the gate. Out the gate.
So as we're talking about the cold, the only quote that I wrote down in this movie is the exchange between one of the actors and the director, where she says, "I'm going to freeze my tits off," and he responds with, "Well, who told you that snow was warm?" Which he's
solid line. And then I took that note as well, and then I also took another note immediately following that with all caps. A line from the song. It's in the pre-chorus of the song, and Zinzan goes, "You're standing alone in the danger zone." And I just thought the 80s were such a wonderful time when bullshit like that was commercially viable.
Could you that somebody is flying down the highway at 95 miles an hour listening to a cassette. You're saying, you're standing alone in the dangers. It's not even that is even harder than the music goes. I can't even remember what the song sounds like, but somebody is flying down. Somebody completely crashed their Camaro listening to that.
To the demo of Blood Tracks, and they're like, "Get these guys a fucking movie contract."
All right, so again, I've got one last easy action factoid.
Fuck yes.
Which is that they were signed to Sire Records, and they are actually the first Swedish band to ever get signed to a U.S. major record label contract.
What? What?
Back in 1984, the first time that ever happened.
Put them in the movies.
That's what guy doing fucking rails of coke off of the steering wheel of his Camaro, smoking a stogie, listening to their fucking demo thought.
Or he was doing it off of the first pressing of the vinyl. He's like, "This is gonna go far, kids."
The test, They go right into filming this scene of a music video, and the playback, as far as I understand it, the playback of the music starts an avalanche.
Yes.
The playback.
Well, they just rock so hard, Kyle.
Exactly.
They rock so damn hard. We almost get a full performance out of the deal.
Why do they rock so hard?
We're very close.
You don't have to remind me about Real Big Fish's best record. I'm already there.
So the playback creates an avalanche. The production team, which doesn't affect them immediately, which is kind of crazy. It's like we.
So this is my I'm going to have to research this now. Unfortunately, because we watched this movie, I'm going to have to A-B this later. But there is this sound, like a rumbling sound, and the girl says, "avalanches." Kind of just oh, that's what that sound is. I am 99% sure that clip is sampled in the song Frontier Psychiatrist by the DJ duo Avalanches.
By the Avalanches? Really?
I think that when the song breaks down, there's a rumble and a girl says Avalanches before they start scratching the records. And now I have to A and B this to find out if that sample is from a fucking obscure ass Swedish American.
I love that song too.
It makes so much sense though, because they wouldn't have had to pay anybody in royalties.
No one knew that this movie existed, including the band in it. Everyone Everyone's hiding from this movie. No one wants to acknowledge that this happened. It was probably the one sample they didn't have to pay for on that album.
You need to report back on that. That's hysterical. So the avalanches show up. The production, they do like they're one take Jakes over here. They're just done. They film one take and they're done. But the production team goes and films.
That's not how you make movies, Kyle.
Well, no.
Matt, we all remember how we did the pilot. Okay,
that is true.
The production team goes to film, quote, plates for inlays, industry terms, for this video while the band and groupies head to their cabins. The avalanche that wasn't supposed to reach as far down the mountain has now reached this far down the mountain, and they bury a rock star and a groupie trying to get it on in a car. Then they get dug out. So there's no reason for this scene at all. The avalanches, honestly, do not affect anything. No. What affects anything is that people leave the cabin. If they didn't leave the cabin, we'd be fine. But it affects the helicopter pilot coming back and being a hero. Somehow he can't get back to where they are in the cabin with his helicopter. He needs a snowmobile.
There's obviously a helipad right next to the cabin.
Right, that's the only. It's a luxury cabin in this mountain, and you have a helicopter pad there. Anyway,
also, where did all the fucking hot food come from when they got there? Because they basically had catering.
Dude, there's a Wegmans services right down the road from the mountains.
It's really so funny because no one brought any warm clothing, but they brought a shitload of beer and they brought a bunch of crock pots full of food.
And this is a classic 80s trope. This is just taking one of those, hey, we're going to go to the lake for the summer, but they're going to go to the cabin for the winter. It's this sort of flip-flop. And they do this a couple times, and I'll get to that at the ending. But they do this sort of flip-flop of things that they've seen in other movies that then doesn't work out for them at all. They're so half-baked that it just doesn't fucking work. But so the band and the groupies are split into one sort of team. The film crew is split into another team, and they're just scattered over this mountain. The cameraman reviews the footage of his B-roll where he sees that there are people dwelling in the factory. Are we concerned? Kinda. So a few people go and a few people go to investigate, and one of them gets lit on fire. That is sort of our first initial death. Things start to go downhill from here. Our helicopter pilot, like I said, has to try to find a snowmobile and try to rescue any avalanche survivors, which everybody's fucking fine right now. But while we wait, there's some what I call underwhelming and unceremonious deaths upon our band. It seems like they just needed to kill off these guys really quickly. In fact, I actually think that they killed the same musician twice. I couldn't tell. It seemed like they had killed this one blonde guy more than once, and maybe forgot that earlier in the movie that they killed him. It's hard to say for sure. But I wouldn't know because it's so fucking dark. I think one of these factory dwellers kidnaps a groupie. I don't know for certain.
He kills the guy with the fangs, right? The guy puts in the vampire fangs and he's like, I'm going to get you, and then he gets taken off screen, and then they take this girl, and there are nefarious concepts that are kind of implied, but then the mother of the quasi primitive cannibal people is look at how they have to die, look at how their women dress, they dress like they're sinful, and I'm like, sure, fine,
sure. If we got to add that, so they do this.
None of this
Hills
matters.
Have eyes.
That's what,
none of it matters. None of it comes into play at all.
Again, I'm asking for too much already out the gate with this, but you literally have the beginning of this movie being that she's protecting her kid from a domestic abuse situation. Why not just make some of the guys douchebags that are also being abusers and make this a pseudo anti-hero,
like a revenge
family,
thing?
because their motivations just don't make sense otherwise.
No,
she goes, if they catch us, basically she's saying if they're going to find, the authorities are going to find us and prosecute us for a 40-year-old murder at some sort of halfway house that I'm sure everybody was incredibly poor and no one reported the murder. It was 1945.
Yeah.
The police don't care.
This is also why it would make way more sense for the mom to just not be there. Like, they ran off and the mom died and they've been fending for themselves for 40 years and don't know any better.
You know, this is just
have,
making
like,
angry.
8-year-old logic.
Yeah,
Like,
Instead, we have the mother in this crazy makeup. The person behind me on my screen for the patrons is not the mom, but we're talking a similar style of makeup for what mom looks like. This is just sort of like this weird caked on,
lots of soot.
Feels like a 1930s like Universal like B picture that of makeup behind us. But
Igor.
It doesn't make any.
Igor.
It doesn't. It really is. It truly is. It's exactly it. So these hill folk,
Igor,
we're in the dark for about what was that?
Is it Igor or Igor? Am I crazy? How do you say
Igor
it?
is young Frankenstein. Igor is everything else.
No, Igor is also this experimental metal band. That's why I got it fucked up. Okay,
gotcha.
Igor. Sorry, guys. Continue.
Spelled Igor, right?
Igorr. I think actually it might be 3 R's. I can't remember. Oh, Igor is fucking sick. Have I not told you guys about that band? We'll have to get into that at some point. But they sing in their own made up language.
Oh, I love that. So they're like Sigur Rós, but metal.
Yeah.
One of the hill folk drags off the lady that I had said for 3 full minutes. There's a lot of he's in the dark. No clue what happens there. I already talked about the musician being killed twice. And then we get this. What this culminates to is that we do. And we all know this from the jump. We know what's kind of happening here. We understand that there is this family that is in the woods that is picking off people. But we get this gender-swapped, spelled out, over-dramatic Hills Have Eyes scenario where the older brother is like, this is why we're this way, to the remaining survivors. And he's like, I'm sorry. Like, he kind of apologizes in a way.
Yeah.
He's like, this has gone on too far. My brothers are all dumb. My mom is old. And I don't know what else to do. There's more nameless death. Exactly. It's like, I kind of, this is my home. And I'm sorry that this is how we've treated you. But I live here with my mom.
But you still must die.
You have to die. I say nameless deaths literally because I don't know anybody's name. I realize at this point in time watching this movie, I know nobody's name. And there are people calling out for people and doing this and doing that. I don't think that happened until the last third of the movie, so I don't know who is who. But apparently the helicopter pilot has a thing for one of the groupies, which is something I clearly missed. In there. And there's a cameraman who I think also survives, but there's a lot of like, we're in this factory picking each other off on each side, and it just sort of ends with this flyaway saved thing, and it's so everything is so underwhelming. Really. I love this. I kind of love the setting. We all love a movie that has an 80s band as the central focus. Like, come on.
But it's not even the central focus. There is no central focus to this movie. That's the craziest thing about it. It's the messiest
crazy
shit.
It's part of the setup to get other people that are not the band there.
Yep.
And it's really kind of wild. It's very silly. My favorite line is one of the helicopter pilot's first lines, in which they're going up into the air and he says, "I've got friends in high places," and it just makes you smile. It just warms your heart. It's a dad joke for all, really. But that's Blood Tracks. I don't think that it's not worth seeking out.
It's worth at least one watch, but maybe if you can find a copy where you can see what the fuck is happening in the movie.
You know
I would
what?
not watch it on.
Let's support our boys and gals over at Vinegar Syndrome, and buy their Blu-ray. They went through the trouble of restoring a real shit movie. I'm sure it looks a lot better.
There's a lot of great features on there. I mean, you can see if you watch the promo trailer that they post, because they post a trailer for all the movies that they release. If you watch that trailer versus just like a clip or two of the movie, you can definitely see the restoration because it's restored from the original negative. You know, we must have been watching a VHS.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, you know, a lot of interviews with the actors and actresses, which just makes me, I love when they do those. And Vinegar Syndrome does a really good job of that, where like you can watch a 10, 15-minute interview just to get a little glimpse as to what the fuck is going on in anything
what was
that
everybody
Vinegar
thinking?
Syndrome puts out. It's really beautiful.
You know what? I can't believe that this is the perfect time for me to bring this up, but this is the perfect time for me to bring this up.
Do it.
At the time that this episode is out, just 3 days ago, on the 13th of January, another film that I remember thinking, this is too dark to follow, but then when we saw a restored cut, said, oh, wow, this movie rules. The Kindred is dropping on Shudder right now for anybody to watch.
Are you fucking serious?
Yes. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. That's
so,
great.
you know, who knows?
I've not
Maybe this
seen
is
it.
a secret
I'm very
Kindred
excited.
that we're missing out on.
Probably not, but
probably
you know,
not.
That,
But
TV, it's that TV series, The Kindred, that was
Yes.
not great. Sorry.
What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
Meanwhile, in New Jersey...
So, Marissa, what talking points do you want to hit on in this week's episode?
Well, Jackie, let's talk about how the film addresses the patriarchy. Ooh, and representation of marginalized people. Ooh, and even philosophical ramifications of good versus evil in horror.
We can point out the triangle boobs, talk about the blood splatter, and the practical effects. And also the male gaze.
My gaze at the males.
Hi-oh! From feminism to fangirling, the Jersey Ghouls cover all the bases of horror from a woman's perspective.
New episodes are uploaded every other Sunday.
Just search Jersey Ghouls to find us on social media and your favorite podcasting app.
Well, Kyle, you picked this monstrosity. So what would you double feature it with to save or hurt the night?
I'm going to double feature it with Hard Rock Zombies. I think that Hard Rock Zombies has
that fits.
a little more energy to it. A little
ironically,
more.
they're zombies, but there's more energy.
It's really I mean, because it's a dull fucking movie. Another Vinegar Syndrome release, but Hard Rock Zombies is a little more fun. At least you're with the band the whole time.
Yeah. There's a lot more music in that movie.
But I also think that the production value matches. Like, there's a lot of other movies you could pick with bands that would almost be like shell shock with how much better the overall like picture quality is. But like Hard Rock Zombies has that exact same. You can only really find it in a grainy VHS rip quality. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's just this is that is what my vibe was for sure.
How about you, Scott?
Well, I'm gonna go with one that has a couple more songs and is also not great, but I just wanna maybe I need to watch a Blu-ray, like a restored version of Rocktober Blood.
Well, I had 2 answers. I really thought someone was going to take Rock and Roll Nightmare, which is also
I would never, man. That's for you, buddy.
I know, but you know what? Honestly, what I was feeling like I really wanted to watch towards the end of this movie, and maybe it's because so much is happening in darkness and I couldn't see what the hell was happening. I wanted to watch the original My Bloody Valentine. I don't know why, but
that's fair.
It kind of fit stylistically towards the end.
Dude, if you watch the blue of that,
boy,
chef's fucking kiss.
I remember when you came over to my house the one time and I was like, I need to show you all the deaths that you missed when we
one of the most satisfying watches of my life.
We didn't even watch the movie. We just kept skipping to every death scene.
Yeah. No, it was incredible because it was basically Okay. Have you guys ever had poison ivy before? You know that feeling where you're not supposed to itch something, and so you itch around the edges, but then sometimes you just go right in and you scratch where you're not supposed to. Yeah. The feeling of scratching around the edges was me watching My Bloody Valentine until I saw the restored copy with the actual deaths. And then it was just scratching down the bubbles and
so
popping
you're all
the bubbles
raw and bleedy. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it felt fucking great.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of popping the bubbles and getting it raw, go to patreon.com/HMN podcast. See the video versions of the podcast. Get some merch from us. Do whatever you can to support the podcast, really. Go to our TeePublic. You can get a hat.
You can get a hat that says Cutie Patootie.
Cutie
I have
Patootie.
one.
Holy shit.
You cannot get a hat that says Silly Goose, though, because I tried to get Silly Goose on a hat, and our sales rep said that it was too intricate of a design. So Cutie Patootie, our most popular shirt of all time, it has sold 10 times as many as any other shirt we've ever produced. Thank you, TeePublic.
That hat looks incredible.
That's
sort of like
I worked at the gym this morning.
Style.
My hair was so fucking wild this morning when I got out of bed. I was like, no amount of water is gonna fix this. So I just put this on, and I got my sweat on.
That looks great.
Yeah. Well, search Horror Movie Night or HMN Podcast on TeePublic. You will find us. Get all that cool swag as well, or buy directly from us at hmnpodcast.com. You've got a never-ending supply of options. And
actually,
lastly,
just two options.
Mostly those two. But let's talk about what have we checked out? This is like our first real episode of the new year. There's been a lot of a lot of stuff. We haven't really recorded for a couple weeks, so I need to know.
Yeah.
Kyle, what have you been watching? What have you been keeping up to date on?
Be more Disney.
I guess. Well, I was gonna kind of catch us all up on where we're at with our Disney marathon, but and I will. So I don't know the last time I must have. Oh my God! I told you about watching Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah.
Maybe. Hey, no, you don't need to hear me do this. Right now, Carly and I have made it up to Newsies, which is probably the best movie about a union I've ever watched. Besides Harlan County, USA, which is the movie you should actually watch to learn about unions. But Newsies is a great introductory course into unions. But I watched y'all. No, that's going to be a pick for the show at some point in time. Pure Country. Has anybody ever watched Pure Country, the George Strait vehicle from the early 90s?
Cannot say that I have.
Scott, you haven't. Matt, I thought there might have been a chance.
There was a slight chance, but it was not happening.
No. So, I mean, Pure Country, I think it's something about it being like his best-selling album or something like that. Like
honestly, is that really the name of an album that he did?
Well, it's the soundtrack to a movie, but he is the person. He did all the music, so it kind of is his album.
Sounds like the joke that we
always
say about
like Time
punk.
Life.
It sounds like something that Pure Country. It sounds like a compilation that you would buy from a mail away company in 1987.
Yes, right. Exactly. It doesn't, and there's I think there's 3 Pure Country movies, but this is the first. I just think it's one of those like relic type movies. You know what I mean? It's like it's early 90s. George Strait, who was at this time a huge star, is playing a fictionalized. I want to say his name is Dusty Rhodes, but it's not. It's Dusty Chandler, and Kyle Chandler actually plays a young is a young actor in this movie, and he does a very good job. But Dusty Chandler has grown weary of the fame and the spotlight, and he ends up leaving the stage without telling anybody to try to like rediscover his roots. And at the same time, the record label or the tour manager is replacing him with Kyle Chandler, who wrote a song for Dusty Chandler, but is now, when they're on stage, he's completely obscured. Like, you can't tell by the lights that it's not Dusty Chandler, and he sort of like it's this 2-hour movie about finding your roots as a country star. And there's this country music has this really interesting and incredible. It's a very interesting microcosm. It's not really a microcosm. It's even too small of a word, but it's this incredible pop culture biodome that exists. And this is a great way to just like dig into that. And it's like, what does country music think of itself at this time and place? And like, they spent $10 million on it. It made $15 million. It's technically a flop, but like country music doesn't care. It spawns 2 sequels, and George Strait is still like one of the biggest country names in history.
I had to Google this because, man. So the first movie came out in 1992.
Yep.
Pure Country 2 came out in 2010.
Yep.
And the third one came out in 2017.
Yes. Willie Nelson.
The director of the screenplay writer of Pure Country said not only was he not involved with these sequels, these were scripts that had just been sitting on a shelf until some executive was like, make it and slap Pure Country on the box art, and I'm sure it'll sell. But the thing that made me kind of take a step back, and Kyle, maybe you should watch this and report back, is Pure Country 3, Pure Heart from 2017, that features possibly the most stacked cast of any of the Pure Country movies.
Is that right?
With Amanda Dittmer playing one of the leads from like Final Destination and Drop Dead Gorgeous. Okay. Willie Nelson appearing as himself, and the Heartbreak Kid himself, Shawn Michaels, as Ted. No last name.
Yes. Okay. Yes. WWE is one of the production companies on Pure Country 3.
Okay, that makes sense. That
feels good.
All makes sense. Thank you so much for taking us down that weird rabbit hole. Scott, how about you, buddy?
It's going to be really hard to
follow Pure Country.
Follow up Pure Country. So I'm going to go with my weirder one of
my
the two.
Non-recommendation for Pure Country. Just my acknowledgement that I watched
acknowledging a movie existed in 1992.
We've all been there. All right. I'm going to go with a real mind fuck of a movie, and I don't. This isn't a recommendation either. Have you guys heard of Crazy House with a K?
No, I thought maybe until you said with a K, and then I definitively knew my answer was no.
So Crazy House, like Crazy Glue. It is a Dutch comedy action horror movie starring Nick fucking Frost. And it's kind of like if they had taken the Too Many Cooks idea and done an entire movie.
Elric Kane talked about this on
Colors in the Dark.
On Colors of the Dark, and he said the exact same thing. He was like, it just feels like Too Many Cooks, but it goes for way too long.
Oh my God, dude.
Was his
it
review.
Takes a half an hour for them to start breaking the sitcom, like the 90s. So Kyle, just for and listeners. So the concept is that Nick Frost is a hyper-religious all-American dad. And this is and Alicia Silverstone is his wife, and then they have a teenage son and a teenage daughter. And it's a sitcom, like it's a 90s sitcom. It's like Married with Children. It's like Full House. It's like Home Improvement. And at the beginning it says this is filmed in front of a live studio audience, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a laugh track, and he's always breaking shit in the house. And then these 3 Russians show up and they start demoing the house. And you find out it's because they're looking for some sort of hidden loot. And then Nick Frost starts to like lose his mind, and he sees Jesus, and it becomes hyper gory, but it's not really gory, or none of it's really like horror. It's more like super over the top action gore, like maybe like the
critics hated this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of hated it too because it did the worst thing, which was be fucking boring. But the concept is so cool.
It has a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, and the 2 reviews that they have are from The Hollywood Reporter and from Bloody Disgusting. And the Hollywood Reporter basically says, when the Russians arrive to wreak havoc, the film expands into widescreen and becomes a constant pursuit of bad humor that's truly a test to sit through, not only because of the gross out factor, but because the jokes are just all types of loud but dumb. And
it's crazy. It really is insane.
And Bloody Disgusting said it somehow makes an 86-minute runtime feel like the longest slog of your life.
Yeah.
It's the equivalency of nails on a chalkboard as a film.
I was going to say, Scott would be the real testament to that.
No,
Scott's timeline is
fucking brutal. But I feel like, Matt, you might really enjoy the concept.
I mean, I enjoyed the concept of Too Many Cooks, but I wouldn't want to watch a 90-minute version of it.
Yeah,
like,
but
the
you
10
also...
minutes of Too Many Cooks was perfect.
Right. Now, I'm just saying, like, it's definitely more of a Matt watch, and that's why I wanted to mention it here. And if you wanted to kind of skip forward through the non-widescreen, the letterbox part of it is very difficult. It's shot really well when he's kind of losing his mind, and it's truly supposed to be kind of like an allegory of the destruction of like the illusion of that nuclear American, like that American nuclear family. And I it's just so frustrating because like I really wanted to like it. Once I got past, I was like, okay, if I can just fight through the bad 90s sitcom part, this will get better. This will get better. But there's one really, 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 really inappropriate physical attack in the movie that I did not like. And it's just, it makes sense that Nick Frost would be in it, but I cannot believe that Alicia Silverstone signed on for it. I want you to watch it, Matt. I just want you to watch it. Don't pay for it, but when it comes on streaming, just watch it, okay? And
I'll eventually check it out. All right.
Yeah, just tell me, and then tell me if I'm right that there are a couple cool scenes, and that maybe it's more a you than a me movie. That's all I'm asking.
We'll find out soon. All right. So we've had 2 recommendations of indifference. So I'm going to give a full-blown glowing review. I texted both of you that this is probably one of my favorite movies of the year. Or of last year. It's only 7 days into this year. I saw the TV Glow. I tried to squeeze in as like a last second watch, and I mean, I think what I like about this movie, and I'm going to talk about it in as vague of a way as possible, but it's one of those films where the more you read about the discussion around it, the more impressive the movie seems, and it already seemed impressive to me when I watched it. And then the more I learned, the more I was like, oh, wow, this is very layered. But on its surface, it's a movie that takes place in the 90s, and it's about 2 kids who become friends because of their mutual love of a very obscure late-night Nickelodeon show that's like equal parts Pete and Pete and Are You Afraid of the Dark with like a dash of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then one of them runs away from home because... she's living in an abusive household, and the same day that she runs away from home, the TV show is canceled with no explanation. And it follows for years as this kid's wondering what happened to his friend, and then his friend shows up like 10 years later, and she looks exactly the same, and she informs him that they are not real, that in real life, they live that TV show, and that this is like a way for them to cope with the pain of being in that TV show. And like he has to do something to escape from this false reality that he's in. So that's like the mystery of the movie. And it keeps you kind of like wondering and guessing and bouncing around. The director of the movie did something really, really cool, which is that they were very upfront with like, this is inspired by my love of Buffy and Pete and Are You Afraid of the Dark? And like, the actors who played Pete and Pete show up in the movie as non-speaking ghost characters in town, and like the actress who played Tara in Buffy show, like they actively tried to cast people from that 90s kids era to be bit parts in the world. But also on top of all of that, and this is where the discussion is interesting, the director is trans, and they've been open, like the whole movie's an allegory for discovering that you're not the identity that you're supposed to be. That's what the movie has done through the lens of 90s nostalgia. And like just the way that they perfectly captured 90s nostalgia and told this interesting story. And it's one of those movies where I loved every second of it. I love the mystery. I love that you don't get a full resolution to things, but you have to kind of piece it together, and you probably need to watch it multiple times to like put together the puzzle. But I will also understand if someone watches it and hates it, because it is like Twin Peaks level homework type movie that like I finished watching it and I was like, I want to go and buy it so I can just like watch it over and over again, listen to the commentary track. Like, I get why the people who love the movie became obsessed with the movie, because it does have that like we're going on a treasure hunt together to solve the movie kind of energy that I was like super into. And literally, if there had not been a documentary about Jim Henson, it would easily be my number one film of the year. But like, let's be honest, I'm a biased motherfucker, and Jim Henson was taking that number one slot the second that documentary was announced. So highly recommend. I know that Kyle, I know Jeanette fucking loved it on Letterboxd.
Loved it. Yeah, I saw the TV Glow was on a lot of top lists of 2024. We're all going to the World's Fair. Also hit a lot of people.
Same director.
So it's Jane it clearly has a great thing going, and I'm really excited to dig into. I saw the TV Glow and then see what she does next. So
yeah.
I'm eager to see it. That's like so my thing. It's like one of those things though that I feel like I need a little bit of distance between before I watch it.
You're probably in it just dropped on Max, so you're probably in the peak of everybody saying how amazing it is because they're discovering it right now.
I hate that is what is a factor in my viewing process, and I think that it's my fault. Like I'm the one who allows it to be a factor. You know what I mean?
But listen, that becomes a factor all the time. I literally just was recording a podcast where we were talking about Napoleon Dynamite and how there was like a chunk of time where I didn't like Napoleon Dynamite because just too many people liked Napoleon Dynamite.
I don't think it was too much noise besides the movie.
It was inescapable. They were quoting
it's the
it.
Overexposure. Yeah, I get it. I totally get that. I've been there a million times, and I've tried to be more chill about it in my adulthood.
Yeah. I think it's like it's both a problem, and doing air quotes here, a problem on my end, but it's also just the nature of like I don't want to watch a thing that has a lot of noise because I want to be able to like decide for myself. And you can't. I have ears. I can't just block out noise. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like it's a thing that I would love to do, but it's too much of an expectation of myself to not be influenced by that, because we live in a world in which we hear and see and read all these things all the time.
Yeah. Well, not for nothing, Kyle. Also, like I can understand this more than I could have a year ago. There's certain movies that you want to have your full attention on, and when you only get maybe these random hour to 45-minute breaks. Like I watched this on one of the days. I saw the TV Glow on a day where Barb's kids were with their dad and she went out to get her nails done with her mom. And I was like, I have two uninterrupted hours where I can just lay and take in a movie uninterrupted.
No, that is a huge factor that I'm not considering what we're talking about. And you're absolutely right, Matt. Because it's also now it's just like
because that's the other thing. So it's not the noise necessarily, but it's because of the noise. You're like, oh, I need to give this.
I want to give it my all.
And it not be like something that's on in the background while you're editing a video, or something that's on in the background while you're hanging with Hunter. Like it needs to be like, this is Kyle time.
Yeah, exactly.
And finding Kyle time becomes a lot harder because finding Matt time is becoming fucking impossible. But anyway, guys, we'll be back next week with even more horror movie night. Keep on listening. Stay subscribed, like, share, all of that good jazz, and we'll be back next week with more.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.